This is RiverTalks with Jonathan Brush, President and CEO of Unbound.
This is the 8th and final episode in the What Does It Mean to Thrive series that we've been doing here recently on the podcast, and specifically what it means to thrive in the context of moving from as a young adult, from being a young adult to being a full adult. And so we talked, first of all, about the definition of what it means to thrive. We talked about owning our purpose, serving others, having healthy relationships, knowing how to create value, being able to live resiliently in the real world in light of eternity. And this final 8th and final episode is for the glory of God. And so in the last episode, talked a lot about how things related to the overall Christian worldview and a Christian faith in terms of this definition of what it means to thrive. And so that really becomes sharpened and honed in this final statement here. And so it goes with the earlier one, to live in light of eternity, which was, we talked about having the context of understanding where we are in our place in the world, and then moving on to this for the glory of God. In other words, there is a bigger purpose and a bigger mission. And honestly, out of all the things we've talked about, this last piece, I think, ends up becoming or being the most important. That I would say created in every person is this deep, innate desire to make a difference in the world, to have a mission, to have a purpose. I think that that's just crafted inside of us. I think it's universal. I think every person wants to make a difference in the world. Every person wants to serve a higher purpose. Every person wants to have a mission, and that you can see all kinds of examples of this everywhere you look in the world, that people who have a mission and have a purpose and are going towards something are people that are generally happier and healthier, and they're thriving. They're in good shape. And so ultimately, to be able to thrive means to be able to understand this bigger sense of mission and purpose. And so that we live for the glory of God. That we talked at the very beginning in the first episode that it was own your purpose. And we said, as Christians, our purpose is love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul. And so if that's the purpose, and then to live in light of eternity for the glory of God is to bring about his kingdom. Now, that's somewhat charged language these days, with lots of phrases of, charges of Christian nationalism being thrown around. And that might be a discussion for another day, or maybe for other people in other podcasts, not necessarily my lane. And so when I say to bring about the kingdom, that's not I was going to say it's not a political statement. Maybe a better way to say that it's not merely a political statement. It's a statement of reality. And to many, it's an offensive statement. And it is. I mean, I'm just straight up acknowledging that. When, to bring about the kingdom of God is to say that there's a greater reality that will exist, that does exist, and will persist no matter what you think. And to many, that can be quite offensive and maybe perhaps even startling. And so say we lean into that and say, to work for the glory of God, to live in light of eternity for the glory of God, is to do God's work and to do God's will, which we think includes having healthy relationships and creating value and serving others and all those things, to bring about the kingdom of God, which we would argue would be a very good thing. Emphasis, capital letters, underline, highlight, a very good thing for all people to bring about God's kingdom. That in God's kingdom, you have ultimate redemption. And in God's kingdom, you have the satisfaction of knowing that evil is forever vanquished and that justice does prevail, and that we are able to live in a world that has been fully redeemed, the broken and busted one that we live in right now. And so it's not just a good thing, it's the ultimate good thing to work towards the glory of God. And then also, that's one of those things that, like our last episode, it's a way out there and a right here type of thing. It's a way out there in that we're working for the eventual realization of God's kingdom, which is over the horizon and beyond our understanding and comprehension, and in a future that we are not able to discern. And yet, by striving for that, by living every day for the glory of God, it's an everyday thing. It's an every moment thing that we are to make captive to Christ, every thought, every word that we utter. That the way I do this podcast, that the words I speak here, that the way I interact with my family, the way I treat my children, the way I honor my wife, the way that I take care of my parents, the way that I deal with my students, the way that I talk to my neighbor, the way that I interact with the TSA agent that gets me into the airport through airport security, the way I talk to the desk agent that manages my flight, that every one of those things happens in light of eternity for the glory of God. Every one of those actions is an opportunity for me to glorify the God I serve by acting in a way consistent with the way he calls me to, by recognizing the imago Dei, the image of God in those that I meet and those that I deal with, those that I talk to be able to look for those ways that I can create value so it's a win-win for everybody, that I can serve others, that I can make myself humble and make myself subservient to others and put others people's needs before my own. And so this last phrase, for the glory of God, locks in all the rest, that the rest of this definition of what it means to thrive only makes sense if we do it in light of eternity and for the glory of God. And that when you do that, it's the highest purpose possible. It's the biggest mission possible. That means that whatever you do, wherever you are, whatever your influence, you have an opportunity to make a massive difference for the kingdom because you have an opportunity to glorify God. And at Unbound, we boil that all down and we tell our students, look, your goal is not to become rich, famous, or powerful. That's not the definition of success we're looking for here. Your goal is to be able to live as somebody who thrives, who is able to thrive. And that also you are called to change the world. But you do that through being extraordinary at ordinary things. And it's the way you live your life every day in light of eternity for the glory of God that ultimately makes the difference. And that then all that other stuff, that's in God's authority level. How rich, how famous, how powerful you are will be determined by God. And if you are willing to trust God with that, then he will give you the amount of fame, the amount of fortune, and the amount of power that you can healthily handle. And to be able to trust God in that and to glorify him in that way ultimately will be better for you, will be better for those around you, will allow you to be able to thrive. And if you can live a life focused on being able to thrive, you will live a life of meaning. You will live a life of purpose. Ultimately, you'll live a very satisfying and fulfilling life. And that's what it means to be able to thrive. And that's what we do at Unbound. We train young adults to thrive. And whether you're involved in Unbound or not, I hope that these episodes were helpful for you in thinking that through and being able to apply that into your life and the young adults that you have.